Hello, everyone. We know that we just started this webinar and there's many of you still logging into this session. So we'll just wait a minute or two before we get started to allow everyone some opportunity to log in and join us from the start. So just give us 1 or 2 minutes and we'll start in a moment. Thank you. Okay, thank you so much, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. And I know some of you are still logging on, so I hope that you'll be able to join us and find the session really useful. So to get us started, just want to say a quick word of hello to everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening from wherever in the world you're joining us today. My name is Jamie Wen-Besson, and I am a Senior Gender Program Manager at IUCN's Human Rights and Conservation team. On behalf of IUCN and USAID, I want to thank everyone for making the time to join this information session. As you all know, we recently opened a call for proposals for the Resilient, Inclusive, and Sustainable Environments RISE Grants Challenge, which is designed to address gender-based violence in environment and climate-related programming. And today, we welcome all of you to this session where we will guide your application and respond to any questions you may have. Next slide. And we also want to remind that before we continue, we want to be specific and mindful of the fact that this session does address issues that relate to many intersection or expressions of violence, which can be uncomfortable, upsetting, or triggering for some. And because we aim to create a safe space to discuss these challenging topics that pervade our societies and limit our collective work, we want to encourage you to take care. And we thank you for being here and demonstrating interest in helping end gender-based violence as a barrier for gender equality and environmental action. Next slide. Now, before we get started, we do have some virtual housekeeping points to share with you all. First, the most important, please note that interpretation is available today in Spanish, French, and Portuguese. On the bar, if you see, there's a globe on the bottom corner on your navigation panel. And if you select that, the language channels will appear and you can select the language of your choice. Please also be aware that this session is being recorded and it will be available on our website and on YouTube in the 4 languages. And we have microphones muted to minimize connectivity distractions, but it doesn't mean that we don't encourage your engagement. This session is the complete opposite of that. We warmly encourage you to use the Q&A function here in the Zoom system so that you can send questions, doubts, so that we can clarify and respond to during the Q&A at the end. And so there are those who have already submitted some questions during their webinar registration, so we thank you for doing that. They have informed the slide content and will also address some of the frequently asked questions that we've already received. And I also want to share a very big thank you to the team behind the scenes, as well as our partner at USAID that makes this session possible. And finally, I'd like to thank our IUCN commissions for supporting today's event and amplifying the call for RISE Grants Challenge proposals. So a big thank you to the Commission on Education and Communication, CEC, Commission on Environmental, Economic, and Social Policy, CESP, Commission on Ecosystem Management, CEM, and the World Commission on Environmental Law, WCEL. Next slide, please. Now, it's my privilege to introduce to you 2 very special leaders from USAID and IUCN. First, I'd like to invite Jamil Biggio to offer us some remarks. Jamila serves as the Senior Coordinator for Gender Equality and Women's Empowerment in the Office of the Administrator at USAID. Prior to joining USAID, Jamila has served at the Council of Foreign Relations, the White House National Security Council, the State Department, including a detail to the Department of Defense, and the U.S. mission to the African Union. Ms. Vigil has led the interagency launch of the U.S. government's first National Action Plan on Women, Peace, and Security, an effort for which she was recognized with the U.S. Department of State's Superior Honor Award and the U.S. Department of Defense Honor Award. She also worked at the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs in New York, Ethiopia, and Iraq, based in Jordan, and at the grassroots level for public health and non-governmental organizations. Jamila, over to you.
Thank you so much. It is such a pleasure to be with you all. Thank you for taking the time to join us today. I want to thank you as well for the work you do to prevent and respond to gender-based violence in environment and climate sectors, recognizing how critical this work is to enabling and elevating women as leaders in climate action. You're joining this call today because you're interested, you are committed to this work, and we applaud you for that. USAID is committed to being a partner in advancing progress in tackling gender-based violence around the world, including in the environment and climate sectors, and to enabling women's leadership in all forms, including in climate action. We have articulated these goals specifically, for example, in our climate strategy, which recognizes that advancing gender equality and elevating women as leaders is key to delivering on climate outcomes. And we've also recognized it, for example, in USAID's Gender Equality and Women's Empowerment Policy, which provides direct guidance to our agency that gender equality is a key issue in a range of natural resource management sectors, including climate-related sectors. To advance these priorities, we recognize that individuals must live free from violence. This includes supporting efforts to address and mitigate risks of GBV in environment and climate sectors at the household, the community level, and in institutions. To advance this goal, we have welcomed our partnership with IUCN. Together, we launched a study in 2019 on the linkages between gender-based violence and the environment, which has generated critical dialogue at national and intergovernmental policy levels. The findings of that report inspired the creation of this RISE Grants Challenge, as we came together to invest more and support more leaders on the ground who are working to promote the meaningful participation and active leadership of women and girls in climate action, and to ensure there's progress in protecting them from the risk of gender-based violence. Just over a month ago in Washington, D.C., we had the privilege to come all together to introduce the 2022 winners of the RISE Grants Challenge. I was fortunate there to meet incredible leaders who come from Kenya, Indonesia, Thailand, Philippines, Cambodia, Mexico, and Zambia. And they are advancing innovative, informed, thoughtful responses to make progress in their communities in different environment and climate sectors to address gender-based violence and enable and promote women's leadership. We are committed and eager to continue our support and to find new partners around the world, driving innovative solutions to mitigating GBV in environment and climate sectors. We are eager to hear from you about the opportunities you see. So to everyone joining us today, thank you all for your interest in, for your support for the RISE Grants Challenge. I encourage you to apply to join us to help protect everyone's right to safety and dignity from GBV as a barrier to environment and climate action. I would also like to thank IUCN colleagues for their leadership and hard work, for hosting today's webinar, and for the work ahead to select the new winners of the 2023 RISE Challenge. We know that meaningful change is possible because of the incredible work you all are doing around the world. So thank you for that work. Thank you for your interest in partnering with us. And we look forward to the opportunities ahead. Thank you to IUCN again.
Thank you so much, Jamila, to you and your incredible team. As we always say, we always appreciate the leadership that not only your team and USAID brings, but also yourselves as your personal leadership and also your personal investments. So thank you so much. USAID is truly a catalyst, and we're really honored to be in close partnership on this intersection. Now, joining us is Charles Carangua. Charles is an international development and environment policy professional with more than 18 years of experience. He has served as IUCN's regional head of land systems in the Eastern and Southern Africa Regional Office, previously having built a strong and successful program portfolio in Rwanda. In 2020, he was seconded to the COP26 high-level champion team as the lead for land restoration in Africa, and has worked to engage private sector and other non-state actors for an ambitious climate action through the high-level champions Race to Zero and Race to Resilience. Today, Charles spearheads IUCN's work on nature-based solutions. In the past, he has also worked for UNHCR, WCX, Oxfam, and CARE International. Charles, thank you so much for joining us and also offering us some words of context and encouragement. Over to you.
Thank you, Jamie, for that great introduction. And again, great meeting with Jamil, and thanks a lot for the very great word of encouragement to this program. I'm very pleased to be here this afternoon. It might be a morning for some of you, so I will say good morning, good afternoon, and it might be too late or too early, but that shows the commitment, the interest that all of you have to continue impact the globe with different work you are doing. Thank you very much. Mostly, I'm very happy to be here with USAID on this particular space. Last year's announcement at COP27 on their nature-based solutions roadmap further reinforced the importance of nature-based solutions, and I welcome the US government leadership and the commitment to nature-based solution to drive climate action together. As the climate crisis continues undebated, hitting vulnerable communities the hardest and making worse global inequalities, nature-based solutions can make a critical contribution towards a global change, not only for climate adaptation and mitigation, but also supporting biodiversity conservation, health, poverty eradication, food and water security, as well as other society challenges that we meet and we see every single day. However, it is important to note that nature-based solutions are not substitute for the rapid phase out of fossil fuels. This has to happen. They can, however, provide 1/3 of the climate mitigation needs to meet the Paris goal and reduce the intensity of climate hazards by 26%, saving up to 300, quite a lot of in numbers here, $393 billion by 2025. IUCN pioneered the concept of nature-based solutions since 2009. And this started building on the work that IUCN have been doing over decades. And this has been leading efforts to scaling up, but also drive high integrity actions for nature, for people, and for climate, as well as promoting policy action, enhancing legal framework that helps population and communities being more resilient to climate change. Nature-based solutions have already been defined. IUCN World Congress in Marseille in Hawaii in 2016 endorsed the definition of NBS as action to protect, sustainably manage, and restore natural modified ecosystems that address society challenges effectively and adaptively, simultaneously providing human well-being and biodiversity benefits. This definition was again endorsed and approved by UNEA 5 in 2022, and the global community from that time have recognized this definition of nature-based solution. It is important to note that this definition put quite a lot of accent not only on climate change, mitigation or adaptation, but also to the bigger benefits that nature-based solution can provide to households in different communities. We are really encouraged that as we speak today, the 3 Rio conventions, the UNFCCC for climate change, the CBD for biodiversity, the UNCCD for land degradation and combating desertification, but also other multilateral environmental agreements global, including Ramsar, among others, have endorsed nature-based solution as an approach to address the global crisis that the planet is facing. But also, nature-based solution is seen as a concept that can support human rights, address poverty and other society challenges that we all know. Because if nature-based solution is delivered appropriately, it should actually enhance and significantly contribute to addressing poverty, food security, water security, among other challenges. It is important that as we launch this core today, nature-based solutions includes and empower all stakeholders with mutual respect and equality, including most at-risk communities and women. And this means that you will need to adhere to strict social and environmental safeguards to avoid harm. I'm very proud to say that IUCN have made quite a lot of contribution on this, but also I'm glad to see a great dedicated team of IUCN, my colleagues here on the call, who are working with USAID, Jamil, and the team to continue drive and bring this positive impact, supporting to ensure women can effectively and safely participate, but also benefit from nature-based solution, free from the risk of gender-based violence, build healthier ecosystems and communities that we all would have wished to depend on. We thank you for joining us today. And as we launch this is a turning moment, and we want to thank you for the action you are taking to address the global challenges that the planet is facing. Good luck as you embark on this journey, and looking forward to working with all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Charles. Indeed, it's crucial that as the globe is working to meet its climate goals, that we have an emphasis on addressing social challenges and societal issues. And fully agree that we're so proud to be at IUCN, where we're not only working to advance a human rights-based approach to nature-based solutions, but also working to safeguard and take action against gender-based violence and environment and climate linkages. Next slide, please. Great. Now, today's session is organized under the Gender-Based Violence and Environment Linkages Center, which is hosted by IUCN under its partnership with USAID on advancing gender in the environment. Our goal today is to help empower you to apply for a RISE Grants Challenge funding opportunity. And so we'll hope that you'll find this session very informative and that you'll have the opportunity to ask questions that might be on your mind. Next slide, please. And as just a quick review of the rest of our agenda today, first, we're going to share a little bit of an overview of the RISE Grants Challenge and the 2023 priority themes. Then Ruwani Dharmakirthi will take us through the application process itself and the eligibility requirements before reviewing some questions that we've received from you all during registration. And then we'll also have a live Q&A session. So actually throughout this session, we really encourage you to send us questions. Some people have already been sending some through the Q&A system. So please, as we're running this session, if questions come up or you have any doubts in your mind, please go ahead and put them in. You don't have to wait until the Q&A session to put those in. We will review those. Next slide. And before we delve into the thematic portion of our session today, let's take a really quick poll. We have 2 questions for our audience, and we're also going to close today's session with 2 related questions as well. And we really thank you for taking a moment to answer these as they help us pinpoint future programming. The first question is, we would like to know how confident you feel about knowing how to apply to RISE Grants Challenge funding for 2023. And here you can make a selection of one of 4 options. 1, not confident at all. 2, somewhat confident. 3, very confident. And 4, extremely confident. And so we'll leave this poll here for a moment and let you all respond. Okay, great. Hopefully everyone's had a chance to answer to that poll question. The second question is, how confident do you feel about understanding the thematic focus of this RISE Grants Challenge funding in 2023 on nature-based solutions, natural climate solutions, and climate mitigation? And here we have the same selection choices. 1, not confident at all. 2, somewhat confident. 3, very confident. And 4, extremely confident. And we'll leave this up for just a minute to give you all a chance to help respond. Okay, great. Hopefully that was enough time for everyone to respond. So thank you so much for sharing your insights. It really helps us with future programming. Next slide, please. So this week, the globe is celebrating World Environment Day, and actually many stakeholders are right now gathered in Bonn for the 58th session of subsidiary bodies of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. And there, a global stocktake to assess progress towards the Paris Agreement will begin. In addition to this, there's also discussions about a loss and damage finance facility that will also take place. Among these really important issues, discussions, and decisions that need to be made, there is a need to ensure gender responsive and socially inclusive climate finance, which takes into account the lived realities that women and girls in particular face. Why? Because although there is continuously growing agreement that women and girls must have an equal place to contribute their much needed leadership, perspectives, and roles to help turn the tide on environmental degradation, biodiversity loss, increased pollution, and even the climate crisis, they still face significant barriers to do so. Not only do gender neutral policies and approaches continue to negatively affect equity through gender blindness, but it also ignores the presence of gender-based violence as a barrier to environmental and climate action and human rights. It also ignores the ways in which climate change worsens the violence that women and girls in particular face as resources diminish and competition and conflict rises. So for this reason, this year, the RISE Grants Challenge is looking for projects that will address gender-based violence in activities working on climate change mitigation, nature-based solutions, and natural climate solutions. Our goal is to build further action and knowledge on building safety and dignity from gender-based violence for all people to participate in and lead greener futures. Next slide, please. So how do we know about all these challenges and risks? As Jamila actually mentioned earlier today, in 2020, IUCN published a global study on gender-based violence and environmental linkages. In sum, what we found is that gender-based violence is used to negotiate and reinforce existing privileges and power imbalances in accessing and controlling land, natural resources, biodiversity, and ecosystem services, and that these dynamics are all exacerbated in the face of environmental stressors and threats that are caused from biodiversity loss, climate change impacts, and extractive activities. We also found that gender-based violence is used to shape and control the world of environmental work and in environmental defense. Here on the screen, you can also see some specific examples as they relate to this particular round of RISE Grants Challenge funding. And you can see that the risks and the issues are quite serious and quite pervasive across sectors. Next slide. So our economies, our livelihoods, and health and well-being are all fundamentally dependent on nature. And as climate change worsens, it sets off a chain reaction of impacts. Resulting ecosystem and biodiversity losses increase environmental, social, and economic risks for people, and the same is true for gender-based violence. As climate change worsens, we see increases in things like child marriage as a short-term coping mechanism by families. We see the use of physical, sexual, and psychological violence to push women out of roles linked to the management, use, and control of natural resources. And we also see increased domestic and intimate partner violence at home and within communities as climate change also affects the livelihoods and household stress. And also, as this slide shows as well, there is so much potential for economic growth and climate progress within nature-based solutions, natural climate solutions, and climate mitigation strategies. So it's crucial that as the globe is increasingly turning to these solutions, we are also addressing gender-based violence and environmental and climate links and safeguarding climate action against gender-based violence. And under this round of RISE funding, there is an opportunity to use nature-based solutions that extend across rural forest and farmlands, growing urban centers, coast and ocean areas, around sensitive infrastructure, and in historically underrepresented communities. Next slide, please. At IUCN, we genuinely believe that the RISE Grants Challenge is a key pathway for achieving these goals because it presents a unique opportunity to work with and receive support and collaboration from IUCN and related stakeholders to contribute to a new body of learning in environment and climate-related sectors on how to design an integrative, gender-responsive programming that includes careful consideration for the safety of women, girls, and others from gender-based violence. The RISE Grants Challenge demonstrates how preventing, responding, and mitigating the risk of gender-based violence across environmental contexts through environment and climate-focused programming contributes to preventing harm and fosters more inclusive and equitable conservation and climate action, altogether realizing women's and girls' rights to safely engage, participate, and lead in these spaces. And you'll see from the slide here that the demand for RISE funding grows every year. Last year, we received 375 applications, which indicates that demand that is all the time rising and that there is a need to fund solutions to address these issues. Next slide. To date, USAID has run 2 rounds of the RISE Grants Challenge, supporting 9 projects in 8 countries. Last year, in 2022, the RISE Grants Challenge was transferred to IUCN under our partnership with USAID on Agent. We ran that call last year and we awarded 5 projects in 7 countries, which started implementation this year. And RISE grantees in the past and present have focused on building new partnerships between environmental programs and gender-based violence-focused organizations to tailor gender-based violence prevention and response approaches for environmental sectors. In the past 2 rounds, RISE Grants Challenge has engaged and benefited almost 15,000 direct stakeholders and over 96,000 indirect stakeholders, and a total of 2,215 people were trained on gender-based violence prevention and response and environment-related programming. 71% of trained individuals reported increased awareness about gender-based violence as well. By building partnerships with organizations from other sectors, this was a new experience for some, and it was a key for generating impact and building institutional capacities and learning. It also helped drive institutional change at policy and programming levels, with safeguarding policies and new environmental programming integrating gender-based violence prevention and response to ensure women's safe participation. Learnings from previous grantees also included the importance of engaging men, including community leaders, and also in GBV prevention and response. Next slide, please. And RISE also aims to foster a community of peer and shared learning among RISE grantees and other peer organizations to amplify impact together. Under the RISE Grants Challenge, grantees will join a community where they can benefit from knowledge sharing, capacity building, and co-creation of the RISE learning agenda and shared impacts. And additionally, RISE grantees will also benefit from IUCN's unique network of members, including countries, expert commissions, peer organizations, Indigenous peoples organizations, and environmental experts, and its convening power to spotlight the attention of the RISE grantees themselves so that they can amplify their impact in global, regional, and national convenings. And IUCN will also support the selected grantees with capacity building and the necessary tools to achieve expected impacts and learning. Next slide, please. And with that, it's now my pleasure to introduce you all to Rawani Dharmakirti. Rawani is a Senior Gender Program Officer at IUCN, where she serves as the RISE Grants Challenge Coordinator and Manager. Rawani, we're so grateful for your advice and your insights for our audience and on applying for a RISE Grants Challenge funding. So please take it away.
Thank you so much, Jamie, and hello to everyone joining us online today. We're so excited to have you here. My name is Rawani Dharmakirti, and I'm a Senior Gender Program Officer with IUCN and also the RISE Grants Challenge Manager. I will take you through the application process and eligibility requirements in the next few slides. So here we have a snapshot of the 2023 RISE Grants Challenge call for proposals. As Jamie touched on earlier, the thematic scope for this year will focus on addressing gender-based violence and environmental linkages in programming that advances nature-based solutions, natural climate solutions, and/or climate mitigation. We plan to award up to 6 awards between USD 100,000 to USD 400,000, with an implementation period between 18 to 24 months. More than 100 countries are eligible to apply to the RISE Grants Challenge this year. The application process includes submitting an expression of interest by 30th of June, and after an eligibility screening, there will be a limited invitation to develop a full proposal. Partnerships are a requirement, and we also require that at least one partner must have in-country presence, and we also encourage community-based organizations to be integrated into the partnership structures. This year, we will have a 2-step application process, the expression of interest, and then a limited invitation for eligible organizations to develop a full proposal. The expression of interest application consists of several steps, including downloading necessary forms, acknowledgements, providing lead applicant contact information, providing lead applicant organizations information, a few eligibility questions, and then the technical expression of interest questions. These are 4 questions. And finally, you will need to upload the RISE declaration that you downloaded in the first step, and also the lead applicant and partner organizations registration documents. The expression of interest stage is open until the 30th of June at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Once the stage closes, an eligibility screening will be conducted, and expressions of interest will be selected for the full proposal stage based on overall eligibility and alignment with the RISE Grants Challenge 2023 objectives. At this stage, you do not have to develop a budget, an activity plan, or a log frame. You will only have to develop these if you are selected for the full application. In the second step, applicants that are invited to continue to the technical application must submit their application through the same online platform that you are using to submit your expression of interest. The technical application will be more in-depth and will also require a budget, an activity plan, a log frame, and also the completion of IUCN's Environmental and Social Management System Assessment Questionnaire. Those selected to develop the technical proposal will be notified by July 21st and must submit their proposals by August 22nd at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Expressions of interest must be written and submitted using the online application platform available at SM-Apply. The application system and forms are available in English, French, and Spanish. Applicants that wish to submit their application in Portuguese should submit using the English or Spanish application. We are not accepting applications in any other languages at this time, and handwritten documents will not be accepted. The primary working language for the RISE Grants Challenge and related cohort peer learning and training is English, including the review processes, communications, interviews with prospective applicants, and the due diligence process. They will all be conducted in English, so please do keep this in mind. So switching gears and getting into the eligibility requirements. The call for proposals can be found at the RISE Grants Challenge website and is available in 4 languages, in English, French, Spanish, and Portuguese. It is really important that you read through the call for proposals document, as all necessary information, including the application process, the timeline, and all of the eligibility requirements are within this document. The eligibility requirements includes eligible geographies, applicants, partnership requirements, programmatic requirements, administrative requirements, and it also includes a section on what RISE will not fund and also ineligible applicants. Again, I just want to emphasize that reading the call for proposals document is incredibly important before you submit your expressions of interest application. Once you submit, you cannot make changes to your application, and you would need to delete your submission and start over. You must submit your expression of interest application by the 30th of June at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So going into the eligible geographies, proposed projects must be implemented in one or more of the eligible countries. We have more than 100 countries that are eligible, and they are all listed here. You can also find this list in the call for proposals document in Annex 1. So going into the eligible applicants, the RISE Grants Challenge is open to legally registered local, national, regional, or international organizations such as non-governmental organizations, community-based organizations, Indigenous peoples organizations, civil society organizations, and so on. I have taken a screenshot of our call for proposal document here, but you can find this full list in section 4.2 in the call for proposals. Please also note that governments and public entities are not eligible to apply for the RISE Grants Challenge, nor are they an eligible partner. For a list of the ineligible applicants, you can see section 4.8 in the call for proposals. You can only engage governments and public entities as stakeholders of the project. Partnerships is another eligibility requirement. Partnerships are a requirement for the RISE Grants Challenge, and in the expression of interest application, you must clearly identify your partners. If you give examples of partners that you could have and you don't clearly identify a partner, your application will be deemed ineligible. As I said earlier, please note that governments and public entities are not eligible applicants or partners and can only be engaged as project stakeholders. You are required to submit the lead applicant and partner organization's registration documents to confirm eligibility and local presence in the expression of interest application. And as I stated a few slides ago, that will be the last step that you do before you submit your expression of interest. Local presence. The applicants must already have a presence in the country where the activities are proposed, or be a local organization, or have a duly registered local partner that meets the requirements for consortia and partnerships. It is also preferred that at least one of the partners is a grassroots, locally led organization who possesses the capability, connectedness, and credibility to drive change in their own countries and communities. In terms of programmatic requirements, we have a few, so we'll go through the thematic responsiveness first. Expressions of interest must address the scope, purpose, and objectives of the RISE Grants Challenge, ensuring to address gender-based violence and environment together while integrating interventions that focus on community-led or driven approaches, engaging men and boys, survivor-centered and trauma-informed approaches, women's economic empowerment as a gender-based violence prevention strategy, evidence-based strategies, institutional learning, and strategies, tools, and capacities that contribute to the overall global knowledge. There is a long list of interventions that we would like to see within all of your proposals, and you can find a full list in section 4.5 of the call for proposals. You can also find this list within the RISE Grants Challenge website as well. In terms of operational and administrative capacity, the RISE Grants Challenge requires that organizations have sufficient capacity for professional and timely implementation of the proposed project. This will be further assessed during the due diligence stage. With no exception, the final selection is conditional on a successful due diligence process. Finalists will also be reviewed and approved by relevant USAID missions, and with no exceptions, mission concurrence is required for final selection and award. The due diligence process happens later on in the timeline, It is one of the last stages. And you can learn more about this in section 5 of the call for proposals document. And then in terms of other programmatic requirements, we have sexual exploitation, abuse, and harassment policy and self and collective care. IUCN has zero tolerance for sexual exploitation, abuse, and harassment. Applicants will be expected to either have sexual exploitation, abuse, and harassment policies and procedures in place already, or to include their development as part of their RISE Grants Challenge activities in order to be in compliance with IUCN. Self and collective care is an important strategy for ensuring the well-being of those working on gender-based violence. RISE Grants Challenge applicants have an ethical responsibility to do no harm and mitigate risks to the psychological well-being and safety of staff. As such, in the expression of interest application, you will be asked if the lead and partner organizations will incorporate structures and frameworks for self and collective care to ensure the well-being of those working on gender-based violence. Should you be invited to develop a full proposal, you will have to expand on this in the technical proposal and include it within your budgets. Finally, the call for proposals document also covers interventions that the RISE Grants Challenge will not fund. You can find the full list of examples in section 4.7 in the call for proposals document. Examples of interventions that the RISE Grants Challenge will not fund include projects that focus on a single component of the issue. For example, standalone programs that address gender-based violence that are not connected to the environment. So we really want to see applications that are connecting these two issues together. Another thing that the RISE Grants Challenge will not fund is applications that do not establish partnerships with relevant stakeholders. For example, environmental organizations or groups, local or indigenous communities, gender-based violence organizations, and relevant experts. We also will not fund proposals that center around the provision of equipment, construction, land purchase, or building new infrastructure. And finally, we will not fund proposals that are strictly research focused. You can find this full list in section 4.7 in the call for proposals. So let's quickly take a look at the RISE Grants Challenge website, and I will show you where you can find the call for proposals document, as well as where to click to apply for the RISE Grants Challenge. Please just give me one moment as I switch my screens. Okay, so here I am at the RISE Grants Challenge Call for Proposals website. Here at the very top, you will see that we have some buttons that say download the RISE Grants Challenge 2023 Call for Proposals. You will find it in 4 different languages: English, Spanish, French, and Portuguese. When you click on this, it will open up the Call for Proposals page, which gives you all of the requirements, the timeline, and all of the information that you need to apply for the RISE Grants Challenge. Go ahead and open it here so that you can see what it looks like. Here we are. Within this document, in the table of contents, you can actually click through all the different sections and it will automatically take you to the section that you are looking for. So for example, if you wanted to see the full list of countries that are eligible, here is Annex 1. Once you click on it, it will take you to that annex. So please feel free to go through this document. You will see all of the information is here. We have a timeline here that gives you all of the different stages and all of the dates. Has links here as well, our email address where you can send us questions, etc. Here you will also find the button to click to apply to the RISE Grants Challenge. And this will actually take you automatically to SM Apply, where you can create a profile and you can start your expression of interest application. The expression of interest application is the first step. So once you click apply on there, it will automatically take you through the steps that you need to complete in order to submit your expression of interest. So let me go ahead and take you to the SM Apply website. My apologies, I had a fire alarm that was going off, but it is off now. So once you get into this page, you'll see view programs. So go ahead and you click on view programs. And here you will find the RISE Grants Challenge call for proposals. Once you go into that page, here you see the button to apply for the RISE Grants Challenge. Once you click this button, it'll ask you to name your application. You can name it, whatever you would like to call your project, and it will prompt you through the different steps. Taking you back to our website, when you go further down, you will actually see a summary of the call for proposals, our objective, our scope. All of the eligibility requirements are also listed on here, and you can click through all the different sections. You have a timeline here, which also gives you access to the SM Apply, also has our email here. And as we go further down, the interventions that RISE seeks to fund are all summarized here as well. And down here, you see this is where we had for you to register for the webinar, but soon after this call is over, we will upload the video for the webinar here as well. Alrighty, so let's keep moving through to the Q&A portion of our webinar today. I know that many of you have been sending in questions. If you see at the bottom of the screen, we have a Q&A button where you can submit your questions directly to us. But just a few reminders before we get started. The window for submitting questions through the RISE email, rise@iucn.org, closes on the 13th of June. So please, if your question is not answered today, or if you have a follow-up question after this webinar ends, please feel free to reach out to us. We are very responsive, and you can submit your questions. We will also post a FAQ section in the website by the 16th of June, where we are collecting all of the questions that you are submitting to us, and we will post the questions with all of the responses on the website so that you can all see it. And as I said earlier, please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen to submit questions to us live right now. When you registered for the webinar, you also submitted some questions through the registration link, and I would like to just go over a couple of those as I give you some time to submit questions through the button below. And it's just so I can respond to some of these questions that we received through the registration link. So the first question was, can I apply if I am not an IUCN member? And the response is yes. There is no requirement that applicants must be an IUCN member. The RISE Grants Challenge is open to legally registered local, national, regional, or international organizations, and you can see section 4.2 in the call for proposals for a full list of eligible applicants. You can also look at that section that I just showed you on the website, which also goes through all of the eligibility requirements. The next question that I received was, can Indigenous organizations or Indigenous women organizations apply? Yes, the RISE Grants Challenge is open to legally registered organizations, and we definitely encourage Indigenous peoples organizations and Indigenous women's organizations to apply to the RISE Grants Challenge. Another question we received was, can for-profit social enterprises apply for the grant? What about small or medium enterprises? And the answer is yes, private sector companies are eligible to apply. However, for-profit organizations must clearly demonstrate that the proposed project pursues strictly nonprofit objectives and does not generate any income. The next question that we received was, could a community response based on their local and Indigenous knowledge system be considered an evidence-based strategy? The answer is yes. At IUCN, we consider Indigenous knowledge as an evidence-based strategy. For example, in past RISE Grant Challenge projects, Indigenous communities use customary processes in relation to land registration and or community conflict resolution, adapting them to address gender-based violence and environmental linkages. As these approaches are well-established and contextually relevant, so we do consider Indigenous knowledge an evidence-based strategy. The next question is there any specific focus on women, youth, and or Indigenous girls? The answer is yes. In 2023, we are interested in intersectional approaches that include or emphasize vulnerable groups such as Indigenous women and girls, environmental defenders, youth, and women and girls who are underrepresented and marginalized in their communities. In addition, the report of the Special Rapporteur on Violence Against Women, Its Causes and Consequences highlights the effects of the climate crises and environmental degradation on the elevated risks of gender-based violence for Indigenous women and girls. The next question we received was, can we show evidence from one of our other projects while developing the proposal? And the answer is yes. We would like you to cite local contextual information, assessments, and research when developing the expression of interest. So we would definitely like to see that. So now I'm just going to switch over and see what questions we are receiving and give some answers to some of those. I see one question here asking if faith-based organizations are eligible for this call. Yes, they are. They are one of the eligible applicants, and you can apply as either the lead applicant or in partnership with a faith-based organization. I see another question here that says, is there a preference for local or international lead applicants? As I stated a couple of slides ago, there isn't such a preference that the lead applicant must be local or international. However, we do want to see that local and community-based organizations are within the partnership structure for all of these proposals. We don't mind if the lead applicant is a local organization or an international organization. I have another question here that says, can my organization apply to more than one country? Yes, you can apply to more than one country. Organizations can submit multiple applications. However, please note that you can only be awarded one grant as the lead applicant for the RISE Grants Challenge. Another question here is the question on government and public entity as a eligible partner or lead applicant. Does this mean a government entity cannot be a sub-partner? So we cannot have governments or public entities as lead applicants or as partners. However, they can be engaged as project stakeholders. I have another question here asking if there are countries within the eligible countries that are considered high priority for funding. And the answer is no. All of the countries that are eligible for the RISE Grants Challenge are equally eligible across the board. So we would love to see applications from as many countries that are eligible as listed in Annex 1 of the call for proposals. Another question I have is, do we use the call title for our proposal, or we can use our own topic? You can definitely name your application as you would like to call it. So please feel free to be creative as you're naming your expressions of interest. Another question is whether academic institutions and universities are eligible to apply. The answer is yes. Please just note that solely research-focused proposals are not eligible. So keeping that in mind, yes, universities and academic institutions are eligible to apply. Another question I have is whether it's possible to establish consortiums for this call. Yes, it is. There are some requirements if it is a previously existing consortium, which you can find within the partnerships section of the call for proposals. I have another question here asking if it is possible to include women's economic empowerment as one of the components. Yes. So you can integrate, and we encourage you to integrate women's economic empowerment activities that include gender transformative approaches, such as engaging men and the wider community as a gender-based violence prevention strategy. I have another question here that says, can an organization that has already received funding from RISE in previous editions apply for this call for proposals in 2023? Yes, we are accepting applications from previously granted organizations under the RISE Grants Challenge. I have another question here. How many expressions of interest can an organization submit? As I stated just a little while ago, you can submit multiple expressions of interest, but please keep in mind that you can only be awarded one. I have another question here. Can INGOs who work in regional levels apply for multiple countries, and they're asking for 4 countries at least? The answer is yes, you can apply for a project that includes multiple countries. And in fact, one of our past RISE grantees is working in 3 countries. So that is a possibility. Just checking more of the questions. What is the amount of funding? So our proposals can be between USD 100,000 to 400,000 US dollars. I have another question asking whether UN organizations are eligible to apply. They are. Just looking through some of the other questions. I have another question. What happens in, let's see. Is the second stage of selection competitive or dependent only on due diligence and technical soundness assessment? The second stage will go through multiple review processes. So there will be a technical review, then you will have also a steering committee review, there will be interviews. So it is quite competitive, and all of the steps are written out in the call for proposals document. I have another question here. Are LGBTQI+ organizations eligible to apply? The answer is yes, they are. I have another question here. Does the partnership consortium have a minimum of members required? For the partnerships, you must at least have 1 partner, so that would be the minimum. Okay, I answered some of these. Just looking through, feel free to keep sending your questions because we still have some time. Seeing a lot of partnership questions. Just a reminder that we have an entire section on partnerships in the call for proposals application. Many of the questions are the same, so I'm not going to respond to each one. So there's a question here about due diligence, whether the due diligence process applies to the consortium prime or to all of the consortium members. The due diligence process will be conducted directly with the lead applicant, but they will have to coordinate with all of the partners to ensure that they all meet the due diligence requirements. So there are questions on whether organizations that have either just started or are a very young organization with 2 years or less of experience can apply, and the answer is yes. Please do keep in mind that registration documents are a requirement in the expression of interest stage, which the expressions of interest are due by the 30th of June. So as long as you can upload your registration documents by then, yes, you are eligible. So I have a question here. Where can we find the list of projects that have been funded under the previous rounds of the application? We do have a website for the RISE Grants Challenge where you can see previous winners, read about their projects. You can see the winners that we just announced back in April. If you visit the RISE Grants Challenge website, which is linked in the call for proposals document. So I have a question here on whether we will provide feedback. If your proposal does not make it to the next stage, if we would provide feedback. We are quite a small team, so we can't provide individual feedback to everybody, but you can always reach out to us through the email if you would like to see if we can provide feedback. However, please do note that everyone will be notified on the status of their application through SM Apply. So you will receive an email through SM Apply on whether or not your application was selected, and you can expect to receive that message for more towards the end of the year as we're getting further into the process of selection. So there seem to be several questions on clarification on partnerships. We encourage you to partner with, and if you're not an environmental organization, we encourage you to partner with an environmental organization. I think there was a slide where we were talking about partnerships. Let me just go back to that so that we can talk about it really quickly. So in the slide, it says what RISE will not fund. And there's the second point, it says we will not fund applications that do not establish a partnership with relevant stakeholders. Relevant stakeholders are environmental organizations or groups, local indigenous community groups, and gender GBV organizations and other relevant experts. So these are the partnerships that we want to see. We want to see organizations that will partner with environmental organizations, with local communities and indigenous peoples organizations, and with gender and gender-based violence expert organizations. We do not want to see applications that do not clearly state a partnership. So that is what I meant. Let's see what other questions we are receiving. So I'm receiving a question saying that the country that they would like to apply from is not on the list. Can they still apply? You can only apply for a funding for a country that is in the eligible countries list, which you can find in Annex 1 of the call for proposals. I have a question here. Can the project cover 2 different geographies at the same time? For example, Uganda and the Philippines, or should it focus only on one? I would say that you can, however, please do think about how the projects can be connected together in the 2 different countries, how they can be related to each other, etc., and also about capacity. Please feel free to keep sending your questions in. There is not a limited number of partners that you need, but you do need at least 1 partner. So I have another question here. Can I apply if my office is in one country, but the actions will be in another country where we already have been working? I think this is a really important question, and it goes into our slide that we had on local presence. So I would encourage you to read through the local presence eligibility requirement. We do require that at least one organization within the partnership is based within the country in which the activities are taking place. So I have a question here on where to apply. You will be applying through the SM Apply website, which I took you through. It is linked in the call for proposals document. It is also linked in the Rise Grants Challenge website. I have a question here. Can a national NGO apply alone without entering into a partnership? And the response is no. Partnerships are a requirement. So as I stated just a little while ago, we want to see partnerships between environmental organizations, community-based organizations, indigenous peoples organizations, and/or gender and GBV expert organizations. So partnerships are a requirement. There's a question here. Is there a way for multiple people to have access to the application platform at the same time? Our application will be developed as a team. Should each team member have their own registration, or should we share a registration? So once someone from your organization registers through SM Apply, you can actually invite people into the application to help work on it. So there will be a button on the application portal where you can invite others to work on your application with you, including your partners. All right, so I see many other questions, but they're repeats, so I'm not going to respond to all of them. As I stated before, all of this information that we've gone through in the webinar today can be found in the call for proposals document. You still have time to email us directly through the rise@iucn.org email address with your questions. Here's another question. Is there a word limit for the technical expression of interest sections? There are word limits. The application will automatically limit the number of words. However, we've given most of the questions between 300 to 400 words, so you should be able to get all of your thoughts in. Another question we have are how many grants are you awarding in total? And for this year, we are awarding up to 6 grants. So I see a lot of questions here about partnerships. Please note that partnerships are a requirement. You can see the list of organizations that we would like to see within your partnerships in the call for proposals. I've gone through it multiple times in this presentation, and we require that you have at least one partner. What is the implementation period for project activities? The implementation period for the RISE Grants Challenge is between 18 to 24 months. We're having a question here asking whether we would be sharing the content of the webinar later, and this webinar is being recorded and we will upload it to the RISE Grants Challenge website so that you can go back and refer to it. And just as a reminder that at the stage of the expression of interest, you will not be required to develop a budget or an activity plan or a log frame. So just keep that in mind as well, that only if you are invited for the technical proposal for the development of a full proposal will you be required to develop a budget, an activity plan, and a log frame. At this stage, we just want to see your ideas, hear about the context, and hear about the partnerships. I have a question here. Can one single application include multiple countries and territories? The answer is yes, it can. Okay. Just checking to see if we have any other questions. All right, I think we can start to wrap this up. If we did not get to your question today, please note that we will collect all of the questions that have been submitted today and include many of them in the FAQ. You still have time to submit more questions to us through the email address. And let me just go back here. So the window for submitting questions closes on the 13th of June. The FAQ section in the website will be updated by the 16th of June. So please keep an eye out for that as well. Okay, so we are going to quickly retake the same poll that you took at the start of this webinar. We have the same two questions as before. And so let's go ahead and answer the first question. First, we would like to ask, how confident do you feel about knowing how to apply to RISE Grants Challenge 2023 call for applications? 1, not confident at all. 2, somewhat confident. 3, very confident. And 4, extremely confident. I will give you a few minutes. Okay, let's go on to the second question. How confident do you feel about understanding the thematic focus of the 2023 RISE Grants Challenge call for proposals? 1, not confident at all. 2, somewhat confident. 3, very confident. And 4, extremely confident. Okay, thank you so much for taking a moment to answer those questions, as they will help us pinpoint future programming. So just as a final reminder, the expression of interest applications are due by 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the 30th of June, 2023. Thank you so much for joining this webinar. You will find a recording of the webinar on the RISE Grants Challenge Call for Proposals website in the next few days. And we will be sure to also post it on, to share it online through our social media accounts as well. So thank you so much again. Here you will find our email. If you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out to us at rise@iucn.org. Thank you so much, everybody. And we are excited to read all of your ideas.